I'm going to be talking about our advocacy grant program, which has most of you have known it as the Lobby Day grant program. We've made a few changes this year to kind of be a little bit more flexible, and I'll get into a little bit more on the reason why, but I just kind of want to highlight sort of where we've been at with the program and what's new, how it's changed for next year, and then sort of expectations going forward with the going into 2021. As the election is next week, expecting a lot of activity to start happening very quickly thereafter, legislatively at the state level. So background on the program, if you're not familiar with it, the Lobby Day grant program was created by the Board of Regents 10 years ago. This coming 2021 will actually be the 10th year of grants being issued to chapters in support of Lobby Day activities, advocacy activities at state capitol. The grants have been awarded to chapters beginning up to $5,000 for the original or regular chapter grant program. And then in 2017, a new expanded enhanced program was created for a $15,000 grant to do some more than just a lobby day, really work on legislative activity in the states. Georgia was the first chapter to receive that grant. Since then, it's been gone. Florida, Michigan, and Texas was the recipient of it for 2020. So because of the change in our world, politically, environmentally, health-wise, we've had to make some changes, and we decided to make some changes to the grant program to be a little bit more flexible. So many chapters were unable to, that received grants for 2020 were unable to use those funds because of the lockdowns earlier in the year, the legislature's canceling or ending sessions early, just the sporadic nature of everything, and then just the health and safety aspect of not being able to do public meetings. So what we decided to do was grant those, to allow those chapters that received grants but were unable to use those funds, to hold those funds for next year. And instead of just trying to do what we would normally do in the last decade, knowing that the expectation is that many state capitals may not be open for meetings like we've done in the past for a large group or a lobby day of sorts. Even in-person one-on-one meetings might not be able to work. We looked at making the program a little bit more flexible and provide opportunities to be more adaptable to our current situation. And so because chapters that have grants already, we decided that they would then be excluded from being able to apply for the existing grant, which I sent out to all the chapter leadership back in September. So you should have seen that. That included some resources, including an FAQ, but I want to be able to provide this presentation and speak to you directly if you've not heard me speak to you on this topic before, and then to be able to provide any answers or let you ask some questions in the chat, which I'll get to at the very end. As you can see on this slide, these are the states that, based on the information that I have received from you or from the chapters that received grants this year but did not use them and have been told that they can take them to next year. So what's new in the program this year? As I mentioned previously, the grants, you could apply for a grant up to $5,000, or if you had not received the enhanced grant, you could apply for the $15,000 grant. We're doing away with, for next year, the dollar limit. I will be honest, our budget for the grant program for 2021, because so many chapters have received or basically rolling over grant dollars, is smaller than what we've had in the past. I believe last year we were a little over north of $100,000 in the budget. We're not going to be 50% of that, but that doesn't mean that we cannot be a little bit more flexible if there's something that arises. So the point of removing the limits really is, one, there's probably going to be less expenses associated with some of the activities going into next year. And then two, we want you to think more about how you're going to initiate, or how you're going to, because this is a change from focused on lobby days in general to more advocacy activities, we want you to think more generally or broadly about what the activity is going to be, how you're going to engage in advocacy in general, and then think about it in terms of, and if you've looked at the application on a more long-term strategic outlook, and then how do you utilize the dollars that you're applying for. There continues to be, there was prior, and there will continue to be a requirement that chapters match 50% of the dollars requested or received. So again, if you request, let's say $10,000 as an example, you'll have to showcase that the chapter will match $5,000 of that amount. So then you would have $15,000 to budget for, and you'd have to show that. In the past as well, we've had deadlines as far as when to apply for the grants. And for this year, we are doing a rolling deadline for applications. Again, that's demonstrating this just sort of the unpredictable nature of this legislative session or year coming up. We know many will probably hold on to regular calendars, but frankly, as we're heading into another wave of the virus and uncertainty about how that's going to impact, we recognize there's probably a need to be a little bit more flexible in terms of when we can apply, when we can expect to actually do advocacy activities and work within the legislature to advance some of our advocacy goals for the year. Additionally, this is a recognition that you cannot really predict what's going to happen. You can plan, if you're planning to do sort of what I'd call an offensive legislative strategy, then this is a time for you to begin applying for the grant, demonstrating what your plan is for the upcoming year. Otherwise, there is an expectation that it's impossible to predict what could be introduced, what could be on the forefront, and you may need to be more reactive than proactive, and that would require some funding. And so later, while the session has begun and you begin to realize that you will need some resources from the college to engage on a particular legislative issue, this provides you didn't miss a deadline, essentially. So we're trying to be, again, like I mentioned, and I'll mention quite often, more flexible than we've done in the past. So why the changes? Again, flexibility. The world's a little bit different than it was a year ago. So health and political environments completely changed, and frankly, it's going to be unpredictable. And I believe so that it's going to be unpredictable for the rest of the year. We're looking at reports on some of the states. There's expectations that there could be meetings like we've seen this past year, special sessions all throughout the year, an irregular schedule than what we've experienced before. So flexibility is going to be really, really important this year. And I think, again, like I said, I will stress that over and over and over again. And then additionally, again, there's more of an emphasis on developing advocacy goals for the chapter rather than just doing a lobby day that we've done in the past, an event at the Capitol. We want to look at how can we expand our ability to do more at the state level in terms of building relationships, advancing legislative goals at the state level. So that's kind of sort of the justification and the idea behind the changes for next year. Will this continue into 2022? Not really sure. Frankly, depends on how the world looks, how this program works, feedback from you and any other unforeseen things that might pop up, how things are these days. So planning, absolutely should be planning right now for 2021. Should be talking internally about the issues that are most important to the chapter, to the membership, to your patients and the state, opportunities that exist. We're looking at some ideas in some other states. I know a few states have done, or a few chapters have done some surveys of their membership to kind of get some ideas for the upcoming year that they might be able to work on. having some internal discussions on a couple of topics. I know there's some other groups working on specific legislative asks that we may need to take a stance on or engage the legislature on. So right now, we should be talking internally, each of the chapters, about advocacy and expectations. As I mentioned, with the election next week, there's going to be an influx of requests for pre-filing of bills in many states. That's already happening in a number of states. I mean, New Jersey and Virginia are a little different because their calendar years, they're going into their second year, while the rest of the country is going into either their 1-year session or their beginning of a 2-year session next year. So there are already bills being filed for 2021. Again, work with any groups within the state that might have similar or shared legislative priorities. And then I really stress, I think what's really important before applying for the grant is to really zero in on some of the ideas or some of the objectives that you'd like to achieve. And then you can better demonstrate that in the grant application on why it is you want the grant, how you're going to be using the grant, and then have a better sort of strategic, focused approach for next year. I will say, there's actually another call going on right now that I was supposed to be on. This is through the COT, Stop the Bleed work group. The COT has decided that Stop the Bleed legislation or regulation or whatever, basically that's their state affairs priority for 2021 is to push that into the states for next year where it hasn't already happened. So work with your COT state chairs and committees to discuss that. The COC, Commission on Cancer, has been having discussions on sort of their legislative priorities. In the past, it's been Tobacco 21, tanning beds, and what have you. So, and then if you're in a state with multiple chapters, I would suggest creating a joint advocacy committee. This was a requirement of the enhanced grant for those multiple chapter states. But frankly, it's just good practice to have all the chapters on board if possible. It's not a requirement, it's just a good practice to be able to talk about the issues. So then you have a reach across the entire state and the membership within the state. You're talking from one voice as multiple chapters. Again, I understand that that's not always going to be feasible in many states, but it is something I would recommend trying to work on. So again, some of the advocacy issues, this is pulled right from the application. It's pretty typical of what we've been working on for the last couple of years, maybe in a little bit of a different order than before. We continue to be really focused on the out-of-network surprise billing in those states that haven't done anything, or if by chance they decide to change it again, in some of the states that have passed something, which isn't out of the question, especially with an election, we're going to have a lot of new members in the legislature or people who have ideas for the next election and want to score some political points. A lot of the other big issues, again, prior authorization reform, UVHPA, trauma system funding, a lot of screening issues. So we have toolkits on many of these issues on our website. Definitely check it out. If you have any questions on those, please let me know. Happy to answer any questions, provide any resources that I can on these specific issues. Trying to develop our legislative tracking system to better focused on the priority issues that we have and to be able to provide resources where I can as bills are becoming available and being introduced to share that information with you. Advocacy support. Those that apply for the grant have received staff support. You will continue to receive staff support. If you like to have, want some support in applying for the grant or planning for next year, please let me know. Happy to talk to you, happy to talk to the chapter leadership, happy to talk to the chapter. Do several presentations every year to chapters on advocacy and sort of getting engaged on that. I will let you know that it is still just me in the state affairs team right now, hoping to have that changed by at least the beginning of next year. But so I can provide as much resources as I have available and time that I have to give to you, but I'll give you as much as I possibly can. We have some resource toolkits again on the website. There's legislative ones, some of the new ones that were shared with the application I sent out earlier or last month. There's a guide on doing virtual advocacy activities. We've had some chapters already start to do some of this. So we're learning some best practices from that area. We have others that are planning some events coming up. So I highly recommend collaboration amongst the group, especially leadership speaking with each other, executives and administrators speaking with each other, sharing ideas. Luke and I can help facilitate, conversations such as that, connect people for good ideas. I mean, that's really going to make it easier to learn from each other and how we do and how we respond to particular issues. The best practice sharing really is going to make our advocacy very successful. So that's kind of what Luke and I have been trying to work on for the last couple of years now to really improve those resources for the chapters to do that. That basically sums up everything in a very quick, high overview. If you have any questions, put them in the chat.